are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joined with me remotely is Zeeshan.
Yo.
All right, man. We're at the point of the season now where, we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of games, a lot of wins, losses, a lot of great performance, a lot of bad performances from players. But we're getting to the point in time in the season where it's getting to the point where the trade season is upon us, where players who signed contracts in the offseason will soon be able to be traded. And there's a lot of rumors already swirling around the league about certain players that can or will be on the move come this trade deadline. So we thought it would be a great idea to kind of take a look at some of the players who we feel need to be traded, or a trade needs to happen for these players. And there are quite a few of them, man. There's quite a few players that either are unhappy, or either it's not a great fit with the current team, or a change of scenery is needed,
Yeah, this is gonna be more of a, I think, exploratory episode. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it's gonna be one of those episodes. We're just going a bit more in depth than we usually would in terms of trade scenarios as we're gonna bring up, and how it affects multiple teams, and it's gonna be a lot of moving parts this episode. So
yeah,
that's that.
And again, a lot of this is going to be speculation on what we, feel is going to happen. So again, it's no guarantees here. We're not trying to say that, this is for sure going to happen. But it's kind of a good idea to look at where a potential player can go and what possible trade options are out there from our perspective. So without any further ado, let's jump right in to the first player who we feel needs to be traded. Now, although he's unable to admit that for whatever twisted reason, we're talking about Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal has been in the news a lot in recent times, mainly because of his hilarious memes of, the various images of him on the bench, being disappointed in his teams, not showing any effort because, he's looking around being like, are these the guys that I'm really playing with? Or, even just, his body and his facial expressions, man. It really tells a story on Bradley Beal being such a great player, but being in such a shitty and really bad situation with the Washington Wizards, man. Now, granted, the Wizards, they have been garbage this season, but, these past couple of games, they've been actually playing pretty well. I mean, they just won today. So...
Versus Miami.
Yeah.
Another team that's struggling.
Versus Miami. So, and again, a lot of that has to do with them getting some players back from the COVID protocol and that and whatnot, but the Wizards have been bad, and Bradley Beal has been the lone bright spot on this Wizards team. I mean, he's averaging 35 points a game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds per game. Insane numbers for this player. But the reality of the situation is still the Wizards just have failed to put a team around Bradley Beal. And I think when a player is scoring 35 points a game and you still can't win, you're at a point in time where you might as well sell high on that player and, not only allow him to be in a better situation, but start moving towards a rebuilding situation for your own organization. So we definitely feel Bradley Beal should be traded, man.
Yeah, I think Bradley Beal, I think, even broke that Will Chamberlain record of, 9 straight games of scoring 40 plus points and your team's still taking an L. And I think he broke it with 10 straight games of scoring 40 points and taking an L in each game.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sad if you think about it.
Very sad.
I'm not going to go the route of most fans, I think, and, kill this guy for remaining on the Wizards, even though it is considerably killing his career. Because of the fact that then you have the flip side where fans complain about things like the Kevin Durant situation in Golden State, right? So I'm not going to go too far on the Bradley Beal thing because I get why people want him out. But then the problem is if he wants out and say he pulled a James Harden and he went to Brooklyn Nets, then people are going to complain about that too, right? So you kind of, I don't I don't put as much blame on Bradley Beal as I think other people do.
Yeah, and again, I think it's nice to see that level of loyalty that Bradley Beal showing to the Washington Wizards, but I think it's the Wizards not showing that same level of commitment to Bradley Beal because they haven't put a winning product around him. They just haven't. With the lack of going after quality free agents, lackluster drafts, not really developing, not creating a system like a working winning system around him, and I think from that point of view, I think Bradley Beal is being too kind to the Washington Wizards by sticking around there. I don't think they deserve to have a player like him. And it's just at that point where I think a trade is just beneficial for both sides. Now,
Well, one side note, I don't think it's necessarily them showing the lack of loyalty back to Bradley Beal. I think it's just general incompetence by their organization, to be honest.
well, I mean, regardless, it still kind of all adds together. We're saying that look, Bradley Beal wants to be there, but he also doesn't want to be losing either. He doesn't want to be this pathetic and embarrassing. So we definitely feel that Bradley Beal should be traded, from not only the Beal's perspective, but the Wizards' point of view. But let's now look into some potential trades and some trade partners the Wizards could potentially look for during this upcoming trade deadline. The first of which, and it's definitely the homer pick, it is a trade with the Toronto Raptors. This trade would basically involve Bradley Beal and Robin Lopez heading to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for Kyle Lowry, Terrence Davis, Norman Powell, and 3 first-round picks. Now, my rationale for this trade was kind of simple. Beal will add to the star power that the Raptors already have with Siakam, Van Vliet, OG Anunoby, and also keeps that core group and builds with that for the future. Also gives them much needed center depth with Robin Lopez, and kind of moves to the future. For the Raptors' perspective, it's no brainer. But for the Wizards, I think this is a good opportunity for them to not only get a veteran on an expiring deal and Kyle Lowry, who could probably instill some winning qualities in their young players, and get 2 quality young and up-and-coming players in Terrence Davis and Norman Powell. Like Terrence Davis, although, again, he makes a lot of mistakes here and there, there's no denying that he has a lot of talent. And I think if a coach really gives him the minutes to polish up his game, I think he can be a great player. And Norman Powell's already shown you that he deserves to be a consistent starter in this league. And it's kind of difficult right now to see that with the Raptors, especially with Kyle Lowry and OG Anunoby kind of being in those spots for Norm. So, and then on top of that, the 3 first-round picks. So I think this is a good package for the Wizards to not only gain some younger talent, but also, send Beal to a winning situation.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a win-win for both parties, especially for the Wizards, who would get multiple picks out of it, multiple quality players out of this. The one I think problem this may pose for Raptors is, you are getting Bradley Beal, so you're getting a legitimate all-star. Problem is it's the constant question of acquiring players, big name players to Toronto. How long are they going to stay? And then obviously if he leaves, then you gave up 3 first rounders, right? And you gave up a quality player like Norman Powell, especially the fact that, people are going to say, oh, Masai Ujiri can find talent from anywhere, right? He doesn't necessarily need the draft. That is true, but, we've seen the flip side of that, where I think particularly this year, the lack of draft picks have kind of hurt the Raptors in terms of the fact that they're still winning, well, somewhat this year, but they're still able to put out a winning product. They're still able to find talent, but there's no denying that if they had like a couple of picks in the last few years, their long-term outlook would have been significantly better than what it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this is definitely a high risk, high reward trade for the Raptors. But I think it's definitely a good one for the Raptors to make, especially considering that Kyle Lowry is aging. And again, the Wizards don't have to keep Lowry after the season. Lowry can be a free agent and he can go wherever he pleases, which gives them the flexibility, because now you're not stuck with Beal's massive contract for the next 3 years. So you get that money off the book so that you can move forward as an organization. So, I mean, there's definitely risk and for both parties. But I definitely think it's a great trade overall, and it's who knows? I mean, I would love to see it happen. That's I mean, I would love it. Which brings us to the second trade possibility that I came up with for Bradley Beal, and that's a trade that sends him to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this trade would involve Bradley Beal being sent over to the Sixers in exchange for Ben Simmons, Furkan Korkmaz, and 3 first-round picks. Now, this one is a little bit more black and white than the previous trade in the sense that you're trading star player for star player, but the key difference is that Bradley Beal is a much better fit alongside Joel Embiid than Ben Simmons. Bradley Beal can spread the floor. He can create his own shot. He is a pretty decent playmaker, at least from what I've seen. This trade also creates playing time for Tyrese Maxey, who has clearly shown himself to be a great player and a more traditional style point guard as well. So that's definitely a great sign for the Sixers. But for the Wizards, you're getting a young, already established star in Ben Simmons, who again hasn't shown that he's a bad player. Although again, I do shit on him a lot, but a lot of it's warranted. But you gotta understand that he's never had a team that's truly built around him. So at least the Wizards now have an opportunity to build around a young stud in Ben Simmons. And then on top of that, getting some first round picks to do that with. So I definitely think this one is a lot more intriguing for both parties.
Yeah, definitely. I think the possibility of the Wizards getting a young star like Ben Simmons is probably exactly what they want.
Yeah.
For if they had to give up Bradley Beal. But I think it would be a good situation for Ben Simmons, not necessarily from a winning perspective, but from the perspective of, he can finally escape Joel Embiid's shadow and then hopefully try to build his own kind of thing. And, we saw glimpses of how that could work when Joel Embiid was out in the playoffs 2 years ago for a bit. And we saw, Ben Simmons with 4 shooters around him and how effective that could be when he had his own space to operate. So I think it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, one more point on that is that you will have to deal with the Westbrook situation. Now that this trade doesn't obviously solve that, but it's something to point out. And also, again, just quickly, there can be a 3-team deal between the Raptors, Sixers, and the Wizards in the sense that Lowry would end up on the Sixers, Beal would end up on the Raptors, and Ben Simmons would end up on the Wizards, and also picks would go over to the Wizards as well. So that's definitely another byproduct that I think would also work very well for all 3 teams involved. But quickly now moving forward, which brings us to the final trade that I was able to conjure up for Bradley Beal. And that's a trade that would send him over to the Miami Heat. Now, this is a very, very rumored trade. A lot of people speculated that Bradley Beal would end up in Miami. And the deal would basically be Beal to Miami for Goran Dragic, KZ Okpala, I think that's what his name is, Tyler Hero, three first-round picks. This trade, again, you're pairing superstar Bradley Beal with superstar Jimmy Butler, with Bam Adebayo, Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley. Like, what more could you want? And the Wizards, I mean, you get some nice young players. You get Okpala, who's shown some flashes. Tyler Hero has already shown what he's capable of in a bigger role. And then obviously the picks as well. All the picks that Miami basically has left.
Yeah. I think Miami's been one of the most rumored teams in terms of their connection to Bradley Beal, and although they've said that their Tyler Hero is untradeable under any all circumstances, if we know Pat Riley, bro, if Bradley Beal's on the table, he's gonna boot everyone out there for Bradley Beal. So I think for Miami's point of view, it definitely makes sense in terms of trying to maximize that win now window that they have with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. And it makes them bona fide contenders, I think. And on the flip side, for the Wizards' perspective, as you said, they're getting a great young player in Tyler Hero, and they're getting multiple picks. So, it does make some sense for the Wizards' perspective as well.
Yeah, although this is to me the weakest potential trade for the Wizards side of things, it's definitely an interesting concept for them to go with. And finally, I wanted to throw out a couple of wild cards because it is for Bradley Beal, of course. He's probably the biggest name on this list that we have. Wild cards could be the Denver Nuggets, who definitely have a lot of trade assets that they can do to make a deal to pair Beal with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. That could be fun. Or even Portland. Now, Portland would be in the sense that if they would want to move on from CJ McCollum, they can move him over to Washington, or even do something with some of the role players and kind of make a big three with Lillard, Beal, and McCollum. So yeah, but overall, man, there's a lot of a lot of directions the Wizards can go, and the Wizards can get a lot for Bradley Beal. So it kind of just depends on whether or not they want to pull the trigger on some of these deals, because there's going to be a ton of suitors for Bradley Beal, but it's just about, will they trade him or will he want to be traded? So we definitely think he should be, but we just gotta wait and see, man.
Yeah, the Bradley Beal situation is definitely interesting. Another guy that's being mentioned very recently, actually, in trade rumors, is Lonzo Ball. Now, Lonzo Ball, he's a very interesting player in the sense that, you have his like bona fide haters, and then you have the people that find no fault in him whatsoever. I think we're both, in somewhere in the middle in terms of, Lonzo Ball needs a situation change. I think this team is a very awkward fit, not just for Lonzo Ball, but all around as a team, which is why you've seen the struggles happen. It's a very awkward fit. It probably has done Lonzo Ball no favors, right? The way the team is structured currently. And unfortunately, he hasn't shown the improvement that most people hoped he would show by now. And again, I'm sort of in the middle where I'm not gonna call him garbage. Like a lot of people, I think, primarily due to his father, hate him, and they're gonna say, "Oh, he's complete garbage." I'm not of that mindset because recently, even in one of his recent games, he showed he can play amazing. Putting up 27 points, multiple, double digit assists. So he definitely has the potential. But I'm not gonna be one of those people that finds no fault in him either, right? So every situation that he's in, I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is X and Y's fault. This isn't Lonzo's fault. It's somewhere in the middle. Lonzo has not been in an ideal situation right now. But there's no question Lonzo himself needs to play better, right? There's no excuse for averaging, 13 points on 39% field goal percentage, 32.5% 3-point percentage, and then 64% free throw shooting. That's nobody's fault, bro. That's Lonzo's fault. Maybe he's not put in the right situations, but things like the field goal percentage, that's his own fault, especially free throw percentage as a point guard, right? That's definitely his fault. I don't know if you have any thoughts on Lonzo. But...
Yeah, it's honestly very similar to what my complaints are with Ben Simmons, is that you have all this potential here, right? Like, you have this untapped potential, and we've seen flashes of it, but you don't give that on a consistent basis. Like, you saw the other night, he dropped 27 points. Amazing. That's the Lonzo Ball we want to see frequently, but we don't get to see him frequently. Why? I don't really know. But again, we talked about Lonzo in last week's episode. Definitely check it out if you haven't done so already. He's having a bad season, man. Like, he's really bad. Like, you can't be shooting this poorly from the field goal percentage, 3-point line, and the free throw line. Like, come on, man. Like, that's bad. Like, whatever. Like, I don't care what LeVar says, how great, like, pair you with LaMelo. I don't care. The reality is, it comes down to, you gotta play well. You gotta show up. And there are just times where Lonzo just doesn't show up. And
exactly, you can complain about the situation all you want, but the NBA is a cutthroat product. It's all about results. If you're not producing those results, you're not gonna play, right? You're not gonna play. You're out of the league. That's just how it is, yeah. Right? That's how the professional life goes. Sucks, but that's just how it goes. But in terms of possible trade scenarios, obviously the Pelicans didn't sign Lonzo to the offer sheet that he wanted to. I think it makes sense from their perspective. I think for Lonzo, although he doesn't get that money, I think for him, it might be a better choice to just move on from his team. Unfortunately for him, I think there's not a lot of trades that can happen, just in terms of the fit for the other team's perspective, and then from the Pelicans' point of view in terms of what they're trying to get to. I don't think there's a lot of options, but some of the options that I came up with is number one, trade number one, a possible trade to the New York Knicks. So Lonzo Ball and a 2022 second round pick would go to the New York Knicks for Reggie Bullock, Kevin Knox, and a 2021 first rounder. Now, I think this kind of makes sense from both perspectives, from both teams, in terms of the fact that the Knicks get a young point guard who maybe can develop into a great player for them and an additional pick, just as a sweetener from the Pelicans. And then the Pelicans receive some, a nice role player, Reggie Bullock, a young player in Kevin Knox who, maybe they could develop him into something, maybe not. He's on, his last years of his contract anyway. So if they feel that he's just garbage, then they just can let him go. And then also a pick for them in terms of what they want, in their at this stage in their roster development.
Yeah, I mean, again, this would be a decent move, especially for the New York Knicks, is if they want to, become a little bit more relevant. They want to gain that star power, that box office kind of mentality that Madison Square Garden hasn't really had in quite some time. Say whatever you want about Lonzo, he still is a name, he still is a draw. Now, again, whether or not the Pelicans would want this trade, now, again, it does give them role players, it does give them a nice young prospect who, again, is very raw but could be developed in the right system. And the first round pick, I mean, no one's going to say no to a first round pick. But so, again, it can be interesting for both sides. It's just a matter of, again, Lonzo has to take the step up in his game. It can't just be, okay, you're traded, now you're in a situation that you like, and now you're going to start to play well. You got to play.
Yeah, I think the only sticking point some people might have with this trade is that, the New York Knicks acquired their 1,001th point guard, right? And the thing I will say to that is that the thing is that New York is, all their point guards right now are most likely going to be gone, or most of them are going to be gone within the next year.
Bro, they all suck.
Right?
They all suck, man. Like, Austin Rivers is your second best player, man.
Like Austin Rivers is, they signed him to a 3-year deal, which, he has a very tradable contract though, so he'll probably be gone. Dennis Smith Jr. is, I don't know where his career is at right now, but it's clearly not on the Knicks. And then Elfrid Payton, he's a stopgap guy for them, so maybe they keep him around, maybe not, maybe they can do pretty much whatever they want with him. I think I was missing somebody, but Emmanuel Quickley is more of, I think, a shooting guard rather than a point guard. But, the point is the Knicks have options with their point guards, even though they do have a lot of them. They do have options with them. Another trade I found, and I'm not going to take credit for this because I did find this online, so this wasn't me. But I found it to be a really, I think, intriguing trade, and one that possibly could work well for all parties involved. So the trade involves a 3-team trade between the Los Angeles Clippers, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Washington Wizards. So I think encompassing our last player in Bradley Beal as well, right? So encompassing him. So the Clippers would get Eric Bledsoe. The New Orleans Pelicans would get Benfica. Bro, I don't even know. I'm not even going to read that name. Patrick Beverley and Bradley Beal. And then the Washington Wizards would receive Lonzo Ball, Jackson Hayes, JJ Redick, Patrick Patterson, and pretty much 5 first-round picks. I think it's definitely a lot, and the Wizards would be getting a ransom, right? They would be getting a huge amount of assets. But I think it's definitely intriguing because I think it works well for every party involved in terms of the Clippers do need a point guard, and we've been seeing that for a lot of time already. The Clippers need a point guard, so Eric Bledsoe will, although I guess in the playoffs, Eric Bledsoe in the playoffs is a different story, but, at least he'll, I guess, fill their point guard role, even though, they have to give up Patrick Beverley. But the Pelicans get Patrick Beverley, a good defensive player, and then they get Bradley Beal, who can, be paired with Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. And then the Wizards get multiple young players plus JJ Redick and Patrick Patterson plus picks for giving up Bradley Beal. I think it's not a bad move for them.
It's definitely a haul for the Washington Wizards. Like when we're talking about, like when we just talked about Bradley Beal and how, there's a lot of potential suitors for him. Like, we weren't lying. There was a lot of suitors for Bradley Beal. And this is one of those trades that, again, can come out of nowhere. Like, no one really expects the Pelicans to be that type of organization, but they have the pieces in place. I mean, you got the young stars, you got some of those role players, and like Nikhil Alexander-Walker, and you got some of these pieces in place. Now it's just about getting that one big superstar to maybe take you over the top. So it's definitely an interesting trade. Now it definitely gives all the teams exactly what they need. The Clippers get their point guard. A playoff performer, no, but again, they get a point guard who's still capable, better than Reggie Jackson, and can be serviceable next to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So that makes that team better. Pelicans definitely get better getting Bradley Beal, and the Wizards get a lot of pieces to build with. So it's definitely an interesting trade. Now, how realistic is this one? I don't really know, because I don't know how willingly David Griffin would give up this much for Bradley Beal.
Yeah, I don't know about this trade, but I think I stumbled upon it. It was a pretty intriguing one. Another player that's been mentioned numerous times in trade rumors recently, and not for good reason, especially this season, is Kelly Oubre Jr. He has been garbage, to put it lightly, for the Warriors. Mainly, again, he is providing good energy for them, I think, and that's one of his strong traits as a player. He can provide that spark of energy for a team. The problem is that he's shooting a lights out 23% from three. Amazing, right? So, that's really, really killing the Warriors offense. And as a result, we've heard the reports already that the Warriors are trying to ship him out as fast as they can. Because clearly that move just backfired for Bob Myers.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those few Bob Myers moves that I think everyone is just looking at it being like, yo, you done goofed, yo.
And the thing about this is that I think a lot of people too, we initially even said, yo, it was a pretty decent trade for the fact that Klay Thompson, got injured. But based on how Kelly Oubre's played, it clearly backfired.
I'll defend us in this one circumstance because of the fact that Kelly Oubre was actually playing pretty decent with the Phoenix. It was the Phoenix, right? Phoenix Suns, right?
Yeah, Phoenix.
Before he got traded, so it wasn't out of the realm of possibilities that he could replicate that in a better system with the Warriors, with better coaching and better players around him. Little did we know, he focused more on running out like Naruto and talking a bunch of shit than actually, performing and hitting jump shots on the court. So here we are, Kelly Oubre Jr., because now the Warriors want to get rid of you just like they got rid of D'Angelo Russell, and look how well that turned out for them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one trade that I came up with is, surprise, surprise, the New York Knicks. So Kelly Oubre and two 2022 second rounders to the New York Knicks for Alec Burks, Dennis Smith, and Kevin Knox. So I think similar to what I talked about before with the last New York Knicks trade, the Golden State Warriors, I think mainly the Golden State Warriors really need a shooter, right? And another offensive creator next to Steph Curry in order to alleviate some of that pressure off of him. And, a perfect guy in that scenario would be Alec Burks, which, interestingly enough, they had him last season, right? And they traded him to the 76ers. So I think Alec Burks would really help them. And then Dennis Smith Jr. and Kevin Knox, two young players that are not doing great in their young careers. We know the Warriors' developmental system. Maybe they can get something out of them. If they can't, cut bait, then it is what it is, right? And then for the New York Knicks, you get an expiring contract in Kelly Oubre, right? If you want to try and re-sign him and maybe, turn him into something with Tom Thibodeau maybe can get something out of him, cool, do it. But you get an additional 2 picks out of it. So I think for the New York Knicks, it works out well on both fronts.
I mean, the Knicks are in a position where they have a ton of cap space, so they can absorb the salary, no problems. If he works out, great. Again, like you mentioned, if he doesn't, it's not a huge loss for the New York Knicks, especially when it comes to getting rid of guys who honestly were busts for them. Kevin Knox did not work out because the Knicks, in typical Knicks fashion, didn't develop their young player that they drafted and highly touted and hyped up. Dennis Smith Jr., that was always a confusing move to acquire him when you had Frank Ntilikina and all 300 point guards on your team. So that one was always confusing. And now he's in the G League voluntarily because he knows he's playing like garbage. Dennis Smith Jr. just needs coaching, and he needs to actually get his shit together and learn how to play properly. So it can definitely
we'll
work
talk
out.
About that a bit later. Yeah.
It can definitely work out for both sides, but again, this is a kind of a trade where you're getting rid of a player, and the Warriors are kind of banking on, hey, maybe one of these guys might be something for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, another possible trade scenario where the Warriors get another offensive creator next to Steph Curry is Kelly Oubre going to the Orlando Magic with a 2022 first round pick and a second round pick in order to land Evan Fournier for the Golden State Warriors. Now, again, similar to what you said about Alec Burks, Evan Fournier provides them another offensive creator next to Steph Curry who can go and get his own shot, who can provide 18 points a night for you. So I think that would work out very well for the Golden State Warriors. And then obviously the Magic have been kind of trying to deal Evan Fournier without dealing him. He's been in the rumors for I think a number of years already, but it's just they're not willing to part with him just for any trade to happen. But I think this one could work out for them in the sense that they get a player they can develop further in Kelly Oubre on an expiring contract as well, and then plus they get 2 picks out of it too.
I mean, Fournier has definitely been an interesting player. He's always been a player that I always liked from a distance, just because his savviness, his ability to shoot. I don't like that he gets very streaky. I never really appreciated that of his game, but again, he's definitely a great pickup. And again, for the Warriors, this is a no-brainer. You're getting, if you're able to flip, Oubre and get Fournier, I think it makes a ton of sense for them. And then for the Magic, I mean, you're getting a player in Kelly Oubre who, again, isn't a ton of financial risk to you, and on top of that, could be a great player, could be a great pairing next to Jonathan Isaac, because he definitely has the length that Orlando's trying to build around in Steve Clifford's system. And then obviously the picks. I mean, Orlando's kind of in this middle flux position where they don't really know what they're doing yet, but if they do need to rebuild, they want to have the assets to do it. So definitely an interesting trade. I don't know how likely this one is to go down because I don't know how likely Orlando would be to part with Fournier. But one thing to note is that if they would part with Fournier, they'd rather send him to the West than send him to the East.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know how likely this is for Orlando because I don't know how high the value for Kelly Oubre is, but it's just an interesting trade scenario for them. One more trade scenario quickly is just a straight up trade with the Spurs for Kelly Oubre for Rudy Gay. And I think it's not
Pop saying no.
but
Pop saying no. Pop,
it's not a great trade, but it's
Pop's either
something
saying no or is he retiring for that. He's like, yo, I'm not dealing with this shit. This freaking idiot driver running out like Naruto, bro. Pop ain't gonna feel that shit.
Yeah, I
bro.
think it would kind of be interesting for both sides because at that point, at least Golden State gets another, quote unquote offensive player, even though he is 34 years old now, Rudy Gay, and then the Spurs get maybe a younger player that can juice out of the Spurs developmental system. So I mean, it's not a great trade. I would admit that, but I mean, it's just another scenario out there.
Yeah, I mean, again, there weren't a ton of Kelly Oubre trades out there. I mean, I formulated one, again, between the Warriors, Pelican, and Thunder. I mean, it sends JJ Redick and Lonzo Ball to Golden State. New Orleans gets George Hill, Kelly Oubre, Kevon Looney, and a second-round pick. And Oklahoma City gets Damian Lee, Jackson Hayes, and the Minnesota first-round pick from the Warriors. So this one is a more interesting one. I think I kind of really decided to take a different spin onto it and just and also I took inspiration from another trade that I found and I kind of morphed it into what I wanted it to be. So I think it's a pretty fair trade. Thunder gets that, obviously, that coveted that Minnesota pick, which is likely going to be a high draft pick this year. So that works for them. Again, the Pelicans get some decent young talent on their team. And then obviously the Warriors get Lonzo and JJ Redick, because why not get more shooting?
I mean, I think this trade is interesting, but I think one sticking point is that I don't think the Warriors would give up that first round pick to get Lonzo Ball and Redick. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's I think my only sticking point with this trade.
I think that depends on how competitive they're gonna be. Like if they're like close, like if they feel like yo we can compete, like if Clay comes back by the end of the year, which is highly unlikely,
Probably not.
and then like they feel like they can compete, then I feel like it could work. But yeah, it's one of those trades that I kind of threw out there. But yeah, definitely Kelly Oubre is just one of those players that he's gotta go, man. Guy's gotta
I
go.
mean, the problem is he tanked his value this season, and so like the market won't be there, unfortunately.
Nope. And especially because he's a free agent this summer too. So yeah, that's gonna suck for him. But which brings us to the final player who we feel needs to be traded, or actually should be traded, at least from the respect standpoint. It's Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose has been a solid player off the bench for the last few seasons. Like he's really rejuvenated his career after all the injuries that took such a huge chunk out of his career. You know, the fact that he was able to come back and establish himself as a solid player off the bench has been
Very
fantastic.
good one.
Very good one, man. He's averaging 14 points, 4 assists on the disastrous and garbage Detroit Pistons team. You know, and the Pistons, honestly, they're terrible. They're not going to amount to anything this season. And his deal is expiring, Derrick Rose's, so they should at least look to, you know, recoup some value for him because they are going to lose him for nothing. I don't see Derrick Rose resigning in Detroit.
Yeah, definitely not.
So again, rather than losing him for nothing, I would definitely look to acquire something for him. And there's gonna be a lot of teams interested in Derrick Rose, man. There's definitely gonna be a lot of teams, and rightfully so.
Yeah, Derrick Rose been in trade talks since pretty much last year. And you know, as you pointed out, he rejuvenated his career in Minnesota, and then since then turned himself into one of the best bench scorers in the league, right? And every team wants that, especially contending teams. For Derrick Rose, and from his point of view at this stage in his career, he wants to compete for a championship, right?
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense from a contending point of view to get a guy like Derrick Rose.
Yeah. So which brings us to some potential trades for Derrick Rose. There was quite a few that I was able to come up with. The first one would be with the Los Angeles Clippers, who are desperately looking for a point guard. This trade would basically send Derrick Rose to the Clippers in exchange for Lou Williams and 2 second-round picks heading to the Detroit Pistons. Now the Clippers would have to give up Lou Williams, but if there's one thing we've known from Lou Williams, he doesn't really perform that great in the playoffs. And there's one thing we know with Derrick Rose is that Derrick Rose, he thrives in high pressure situations. Like he does very well, as attest to his clutch shots and zero reaction, you know, with his team celebrating around him. So Derrick Rose is definitely helping that perspective. And again, Derrick Rose has been a steady ball handler who can create his own offense. He can also play make. I mean, a lot of people really think Derrick Rose is not really a great playmaker, but in reality, he's always been great. He's just been with shitty talent for the last like 4 years that he, you know, it's kind of difficult for him.
Yeah, I think it solves the Clippers' problem on 2 fronts. Number one, Lou Williams has not been as good this year. You know, possible age-related decline, maybe.
Maybe no
And then
Montrez for that pick and roll.
yeah, maybe. And then as you point out, he hasn't been great in the playoffs. You know, over his career either. Derrick Rose, on the other hand, has been great in the playoffs over his career. So I think that's one added bonus for the Clippers. And then number 2, as I think you also pointed out, this helps the Clippers in terms of their point guard situation, where we've reiterated, and many fans also have reiterated a number of times, the fact that the Clippers need another playmaker, right? And Derrick Rose could fill that role pretty well. Again, he's not, you know, I think his playmaking gets underrated, but, you know, if you channel him into that type of role for the Clippers where he's not asked to drop, you know, 18 points a night, instead he's asked to, you know, contribute 12 points a night and get maybe 5 or 6 assists, then I think you can see him really thrive in that role, and the Clippers could definitely take another step forward in their championship aspirations.
Yeah, I mean, and again, for the one point for the Detroit Pistons, you are getting Lou Williams, but you can flip him to another contending team and get more picks for him. So you're definitely able to do that, and also getting the 2 second-round picks also helps you out as well, because it's better. Like at least something is better than nothing for Derrick Rose. Which brings me into the next trade. Now, this trade would be sending Derrick Rose to the Toronto Raptors. Actually, would be sending Derrick Rose and Wayne Ellington over to the Raptors in exchange for Terrence Davis, Patrick McCaw, and Matt Thomas, and 2 second-round picks. Now, for the Raptors, one thing they have really struggled with this season in particular has been bench scoring and also having a third ball handler coming off the bench. Now, Lowry and VanVleet are obviously starting for the Raptors, and those are the two best ball handlers on the team. The Raptors really haven't had anyone who can consistently come off the bench and score. Like they haven't had any consistent scoring besides Chris Boucher, which again, hit or miss on the night in the matchup. And B, have someone who can actually handle the ball and facilitate the offense. There's one thing Derrick Rose is going to do is he's going to be able to attack the rim. He's going to be able to create opportunities for other players because of his ability to get to the rim. And that's something the Raptors surely would definitely appreciate on this team. Also, getting a guy like Wayne Ellington who can help spread the floor doesn't hurt either. Like, he's been decent. He's been pretty decent in Detroit, actually. So Wayne Ellington and Derrick Rose come over to the Raptors would definitely help this team. Now, the Raptors would have to give up Terrence Davis, who, again, as I mentioned earlier, he's a solid young player, but right now he's not really getting the minutes that he needs to grow with. And I think he's also in Nick Nurse's doghouse, along with Matt Thomas. But he's shown flashes of and potential to be a great player. So I definitely think Terrence Davis is a great pickup for the Detroit Pistons. On top of that, they do get Matt Thomas, who, again, man's Iceman right there. Like, that guy can shoot. And again, I think...
Mr. 99.
Mr. 99.9%, bro. He's Matt Thomas, man. Like, he's... shout out Alex Wong, bro. Like, man's been on point with Alex for the Matt Thomas propaganda. But the thing about Matt Thomas...
And his Utah propaganda.
Oh, and his Utah propaganda. That's William Lou. I feel like that's more William Lou. But... the thing about Matt Thomas is that he can definitely shoot, and he's shown glimpses of his game. I think it's just a matter of that he doesn't really fit in Nick Nurse's system, but I think a lot of teams would definitely like to have a shooter like that, and I think Matt is a steady hand, and I think he's a great young player who would get a great opportunity in Detroit. And then Pat McCaw was just thrown in there with salary filler because I personally just wanted them off the Raptors. That was.
I mean, you don't want the 3-peat champ on the Raptors anymore,
bro. Your 3-peat died when you couldn't help us win last year, bro.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting trade for both sides. The Raptors need some punch off their bench. It's just a question of whether or not they want to give up guys like TD and Matt Thomas and the picks.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the Raptors in particular, like, they have so many guys in their developmental system. Like, you drafted Malachi, you have Jalen Harris, so you have guys in your system. So I think moving out some players that you're already not even playing to get some depth that you need, I think it's a pretty good solid idea. Which brings us to another trade. This trade would be involving the Houston Rockets and the Detroit Pistons. Now, the Rockets have honestly been amazing since the James Harden trade, and I mean, I did really like this trade for Houston. But if there's one thing, again, Houston is still missing is depth, and I think getting Derrick Rose as well as Rodney McGruder from this trade would definitely help them. So obviously the deal would involve Rose and McGruder heading to Houston in exchange for Daniel House and Dante Exum and a first-round pick heading to the Detroit Pistons. Now, for the Rockets' point of view, they get some much-needed depth, not only at the point guard position, who right now Eric Gordon is their backup point guard. They also get Rodney McGruder, who fits their system of shoot first, ask questions later. So, again, having him and Ben McLemore on the same lineup will be great for the spacing, especially for a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, who comes off the bench sometimes on occasion. So that would also be a great thing for that team. But then on the flip side, we're sending to Detroit. The Rockets will have to part with notorious bubble offender Daniel House because
that to this day it's like, why, bro? Why would you do that?
He's Daniel House, bro. He wanted to feel at home. But the thing is that he's shown himself to be a solid young player with the Houston Rockets, and I think the Rockets would have to give up some kind of value to get two decent players in Rose and McGruder. So that's why I threw House in the deal. And then obviously Dante Exum was kind of just there for salary filler. So if anyone can eat that salary, Detroit can eat it. And then obviously they get a first round pick. So this is one of those trades that they get a first round pick because Houston had a surplus of first round picks in this draft because of the James Harden trade. So I think it definitely works out for both sides. I kind of really like it from the Rockets' perspective. But even the Pistons get a solid return for Derrick Rose.
Yeah, the Pistons, they'll get that pick is number one, and then they'll get a quality role player in Daniel House. And then for Rockets, obviously, they need some bench depth. They have absolutely pretty much no bench, aside from Eric Gordon and DeMarcus Cousins, who they bring off the bench. So I think are some bench depth, then you would see them really catapult up the rankings, which they already have. After the James Harden trade with Victor Oladipo now being there and Christian Wood taking that next step. So I think Houston could definitely be a very nice team. Adding Derrick Rose.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So Derrick Rose is definitely one of those players that should be on the move by this trade deadline. But yeah, those were some of our main players that we wanted to talk about that need to be traded. We want to touch on a couple of honorable mentions that we feel should be traded, but we're not really sure if they are going to be traded and how likely. The first couple, actually from the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's shipping out Andre Drummond and JaVale McGee. This is mainly because of the genius that. Man, I can't believe saying the Cleveland Cavaliers and genius in the same sentence.
Kobe Holmes.
Damn. But yeah, they did make a great move, acquiring Jared Allen, who's already showing himself as a great player that Brooklyn probably shouldn't have let go. But you
gotta. They shouldn't have let him go, but I mean, when you're faced with the opportunity to get James Harden, kind of gotta go for it.
Yeah, but again, the Cavs have these two other centers and these veteran centers who aren't part of their long-term future in Cleveland, and I think if they have an opportunity to ship them out, they will. I think JaVale might be more likely to be shipped out because his deal's a lot cheaper. Andre Drummond's on that massive $27 million deal, so I don't know how any team would be able to move that. So
JaVale McGee I think will likely be traded by the trade deadline to a contender. Maybe I don't know what the rule is, but I don't know if the Lakers can get him back because they already traded him. So I think there's a rule against that if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, JaVale McGee will definitely be gone by the trade deadline. I think because again, as you pointed out, he has a very movable contract. Andre Drummond, from the reports that I'm hearing, is he might get bought out, and then if he does get bought out, he's gonna go to Brooklyn. So the Brooklyn Nets will be.
God damn it, man!
Just add another, the Thanos with the gauntlet, bro. Just add another freaking, yeah. Just add another one to Brooklyn Nets.
Take this in. They need all these players to beat LeBron. Just saying. Like, you need to add another guy? You need to add another guy.
That's crazy. But yeah, the Cleveland Cavaliers definitely have some options, and it's definitely some. They definitely have some leverage, and they definitely have some good options going for them.
Yeah, the second honorable mention is JJ Redick. We did actually touch upon him when we were discussing Lonzo Ball. The Pelicans are actually shopping Redick and Ball together. Again, JJ Redick he's again a veteran player. He's having a kind of down year this season. Now age might be catching up to him. But again, he's still a shooter. If he catches fire, especially for a team that's looking to go on a deep playoff run, he can come in handy. A contending team will always want a shooter on their team, and JJ Redick has shown himself to be one of the best and most consistent shooters in the league today.
Yeah, JJ Redick has been linked to pretty much, I think, 3 main teams recently, which is the Philadelphia 76ers, the Boston Celtics, and the Milwaukee Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty much all the obviously contending teams. I think
he was also linked to Brooklyn too.
Yeah, in Brooklyn. So
all of them are Atlantic teams. Why?
Yeah, I know, bro. Our division's crazy, bro.
Stacked, yo. It used to be garbage.
But, no. But yeah, JJ Redick, to a contending team would be a very good pickup for them. Obviously, as you touched upon, JJ Redick's being kind of subpar this year in terms of his shooting. But, knowing JJ Redick, we fully expect his percentages to climb up again, especially on a team where, you have a lot of other star players attracting all the attention. And now for JJ Redick, he can just literally stand there and get wide open threes. Yeah. JJ Redick is one of the great shooters of all time.
Yeah. Also for the Pelicans perspective, like, again, he doesn't really fit your timeline anymore. And I think you owe it to him to kind of ship him out and also gain some value for that player at the same time. Which brings us to another couple of players. And it's very unlikely these players are going to be moved because of how big their contracts are. It's DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge from the Spurs. Now, obviously, DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge are on expiring deals that end this season, and I don't expect any of them to be back. To be honest with you, I don't think the Spurs want them back. But I think they should do at least some due diligence to see if they can recoup some value rather than losing these guys for nothing. But that all kind of depends on the market and who's willing to take on that, because DeMar DeRozan makes about $27 million. LaMarcus Aldridge is making about 24. So it's going to be difficult to find a trade that will work, but they definitely should move on and maybe try to recoup some assets for these players.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you ship off these two to get some assets if you're the Spurs. Unfortunately for them, their contracts are so massive that it's likely not going to happen. And you're just going to have to recoup your losses in the offseason and let them walk for nothing, pretty much.
Unless it's a salary dump. That's the only way I can see how this works.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two definitely need to be on the move. And finally, the last one is John Collins. We did touch about John Collins, I believe, a couple of episodes ago, if I'm not mistaken. But John Collins has been all right this season, but he hasn't really shown to be a great fit, especially with his new iteration of the Hawks. So he's and also he's been looking for a new contract. He wants to get paid by the Hawks this summer, and the Hawks have kind of been like,
I mean, they didn't give him the money.
Yeah.
In the off season, right? So that was the main reason why he was pissed off at Hawks management, because they couldn't come to an extension. So that's the primary reason as to why he's been looking for possibly a new place to go, and more opportunity. And as you were talking about, his fit is also not great with this new iteration of the Hawks, who need defense particularly, because their offensive, their offense is already pretty good. So they pretty much need defense, and throwing John Collins there does not help your defense at all. Mm-hmm. So I think for him too, he likely wants another opportunity in another setting.
Yeah, but those were our picks for the players that we feel need to be traded. Definitely let us know what you guys think. Do you agree or disagree with some of our scenarios? Where do you think some of these players will end up, or who do you think should be traded by this trade deadline? Definitely let us know. But it's definitely going to be a busy trade. I mean, I'm hoping for a busy trade season at the trade deadline. Which brings us finally into the up and under segment for this week. First off, are you up or under on the NBA and the NBA Player Association discussing an all-star weekend filled with all the events, the dunk contest, the 3-point contest, the skills competition, and the all-star game itself? So are you up or under on that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm under on it. I think one extra point, I think they want to do this within 1 day or something.
What?
Like
How?
not yeah. Bro, I don't know, man. This is all like this is why I'm under on it, man. First of all, we talked about this I think it was the last episode, right, when we were talking about them possibly including an all-star game. It's like, bro, with all of the issues going on, the fact that you have to postpone games already, right? The fact that you have to go through daily testing, and then you're gonna create a hub where like all of these players from all these different teams come into one setting. Like, bro, it's a recipe for disaster, right? And also the fact that you talked about it last episode as well. It makes no sense without fans, because the All-Star weekend is about the fans. It celebrates the fans. It celebrates the players' achievement, right? And the players get to show out in front of the fans. And without the fans, well, that's gonna be the worst All-Star weekend. I think we can both say that for sure. It's gonna be a dead All-Star, All-Star weekend, or All-Star day, apparently, whatever they're thinking. The main thing about this is that they play this game for charity and whatnot. I mean, cool, but if anything, bro, just donate charity. Like, fam, you're literally just risking everyone for no reason.
Yeah, like, honestly, man, I just don't see a point of it. It's nice in theory to keep up the tradition of keeping up an all-star game, but we don't need it, man. Like, especially in these times, I'd rather give the players a rest so that we get a much better playoffs than have an all-star break, risk people, getting infected, and then postponing games, and them not even being able to play in the playoffs. So, to me, I would say get to the playoffs at all costs. The NFL didn't even do the Pro Bowl this year, right? Or are
Well,
they
they
doing?
did the Pro Bowl, but it was on Madden.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, the Pro Bowl. Okay, listen, bro. The Pro Bowl is a bit different because of the fact that everyone hates the Pro Bowl, right? And nobody even likes it at all compared to the NBA All Star Weekend, which most people by and large like. The difference is the NFL. Their whole Pro Bowl thing. Everyone pretty much universally hates it. And then the fact that they went on Madden this year, literally nobody, there's not one person that I saw that actually watched any of this stuff, right? So, I mean, and the NFL is a different case because their events just suck entirely.
regardless, I mean, they didn't host their All Star event. So I think the NBA should follow suit. The NBA shouldn't host an All Star game either.
I mean, the NFL does have like a million more players though, so
I mean,
that's, I
it
guess, one
doesn't matter.
caveat.
You could do something similar with 2K. Why not? I feel like more people would watch it, honestly, to see NBA players do it.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Next up, are you up or under on the Brooklyn Nets signing Iman Shumpert to a deal?
Okay, I'm up on it from the Brooklyn Nets perspective. I'm under on it from the rest of the league perspective and every other fan of basketball. First off, from the Brooklyn Nets perspective, obviously, you pick up a much needed wing player who can play some defense. You can also spread the floor as well. On a good night, he can spread the floor. Let's give him that. But again, Iman Shumpert, another body, another veteran guy who's been on championship teams, who understands what it takes to win. And the Nets are kind of just gearing up for that playoff run. Now, for the flip side of it, from every other NBA fan out there, is that seriously, man, how many more players do y'all need, man? Like, y'all already like won the East without even like playing the playoffs, and now you just keep getting players and players and players and players, all to just beat who? LeBron.
Listen, man, I'm not gonna fault them that much because of the fact that Iman Shumpert was pretty much out of a job, and like Brooklyn needed somebody for cheap, so they just gave him a contract. I mean, I guess if you're Iman Shumpert, this is a great opportunity for you. Again, you've been on a championship team in Cleveland. You're a veteran that's been through it around the league. And
He's
then
also
now you can just
very
join
well
this team.
liked. A lot of people like Iman Shumpert.
He's a very well respected vet around the league. He's a very well liked personality around the league.
Also,
he has a great personality on radio. He's a great he has a great like okay, you know what? Never
face
mind.
for radio.
He does his podcasts and whatnot are very good. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, again, I
It's
believe
like 2 a.m. in the morning right now.
I believe he's returning to Brooklyn too. He used to be on the Nets as well at one point in his career, so I think he's returning back to Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
I think so, possibly.
he's been a journeyman as well. So I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But moving on, finally, are you up or under on Dennis Smith Jr. apparently asking the New York Knicks to let him play in the G League bubble because he was that garbage?
I mean, I'm up on it because of the fact that, okay, well, first of all, it's not necessarily that he's just garbage.
Self-awareness.
He is pretty bad, but it's because of the fact that he's literally getting no minutes in New York. And he's pretty much just racking up DNP since last year. Again, this is because of the fact that he just isn't a good NBA player, right? Like, people are wowed by his athleticism and whatnot. The thing about the NBA game is that's not just about athleticism. You have to be a good all-around player, right? And he's just at this stage of his career, unfortunately, not a good all-around player, which is why I respect the fact that, he's not getting that run in the league. So he and a lot of players have struggled with this, right? Going down a level, going to the G League, a lot of players, get caught up in their ego about it. Which is why I respect him for, putting his ego aside and saying, yo, you know what? Let me try to develop myself better. Let me get some run. Let me get some touches, some shots up, and let me go to the G League. So I do respect that, and obviously the Knicks granted him the request because of the fact that he's not really doing anything for them, so might as well just accommodate him. Why not?
The Knicks were like, if there's any chance we can win a championship, it'll be in the G League. So I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, like, again, we talked about this with Lonzo Ball. You gotta show it on the court. If you don't show it on the court, then it's none of whatever you do doesn't matter. So sure, it's great that he has that self-awareness. I wish James Dolan could notice that self-awareness that his team is absolutely a shit show. But it's fine. I mean, it's fine that he loses. He learns lessons from his players. But yeah, I mean, again, it's.
Let's be real. James Dolan ain't learning no lessons from any of his players, bro.
Yeah, you're right.
That's not gonna happen.
He's too busy with his jazz band or whatever the hell he's doing.
Yeah, exactly, bro. You wanna know his jazz band.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, again, it's nice to see Dennis Smith Jr. going down there. I hope it results to amounts to something. I hope it helps him gain some more confidence or gain a different perspective on his game. But we'll see what happens with him, man. Like, it's nice to see, but again, actions speak louder than words here. So we'll have to wait and see. But with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, on YouTube, wherever you can find a podcast. You can find us with the Up and Under Podcast. Also, check us out on social media. Jesus, it's late. Twitter. Yeah, it's late, man. Twitter and Instagram at up_and_under_podcast. Facebook.com/up_and_under_podcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or a reaction to news as they occur. Also, check out our website, upandunderpodcast.com. It's a central hub for the show. It's a place where if you don't have time to listen to the full episode, you can read about it on our blog post. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so. And yeah, man, trade season is coming, man. Trade season is coming. And we'll keep you guys posted on all the latest news, the rumors, whatever we want to talk about, and we feel that it's going to be...
All-Star predictions coming up soon.
All-Star predictions are going to be coming up soon. So definitely stay tuned. A lot of great content coming up on the show. But with that concludes this week's episode. We see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.